You ready? The mall and one west of the mall. All right, you ready? That one's all. We stayed with the one. Okay, so we stayed at that. That is what in April.
It's Oh, Janet does. Oh,
Yeah.
well.
All righty, it's 8:30. We will call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. All righty. Made it in another year. All right, so we will begin with the reorganization of the board. We'll begin with letter A, election of a chairperson for 2018. Do I have anybody who would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. We elect Leanne Pierce as chairperson for 2018.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to elect Commissioner Pierce for chairperson for 2018. Any discussion? If not, I will call the roll. Miller?
Aye.
Krogman?
Aye.
Bartley?
Aye.
Pierce? Jensen?
Aye.
Motion carries. I will let you take it away, Leanne.
The next item on our agenda is the election of a chairperson for 2018.
Vice Chair.
Vice chair, excuse me, vice chair for 2018.
I'll make a motion that we have Commissioner Bartley as our Vice Chair.
Second.
Anything further? Call the roll.
Krogman?
Aye.
Bartley?
Aye.
Pierce?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is an invitation for a citizen to schedule time on the commission agenda for an item not listed. Is there anyone that would like to put anything on the agenda? If not, we'll move on to approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda? Then the agenda is approved. Next, we have our consent agenda. And on the consent agenda, we've got approval of minutes, approval of travel and education requests, approval of the Human Services report. Any changes or corrections to the consent agenda? If not, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Bartley? Pierce?
Aye.
Miller? Krogman?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Motion carries.
We'll move on to approval of claims.
Move approval.
Second.
Are there any additions or corrections on the claims? If not, would you please call the roll?
Pierce?
Aye.
Miller? Krogman?
Aye.
Bartley?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Department head reports. Chris, would you want to start?
Good morning.
Morning.
Well, you're seeing a year's compilation of work here that was submitted in your packets. This didn't really need to be an agenda item. There's no action that needs to be taken. This is all informational. These are the reports that I'm required to send to the Department of Revenue, and with that I also send them to the Commission. So you're aware of what's going on and where we were and what we've done and where we're heading. So the first one is the one that's up there now. This is just kind of a quick summation of what has happened and everything else. From 2017 to 2018, the ag land productivity, these are numbers that our office doesn't really have any control over any longer. We're just bookkeepers of that number. The revenue gives us the top dollar for crop and grass soils every year now. So for 2018, the top dollar for crop soils is going from $3,690.89 to $3,918.86, which correlates to a 6% increase for crop soil types. Last year we had a decrease. Last year, if you remember, we weren't at full productivity. We were still chasing the market. We got there actually in 2016. We finally hit where we were supposed to be, and I informed the county commission and stuff and the townships. Now we're on the ebbs and tides of that Olympic average. I said, if commodity prices stay low, I would expect that we've hit the peak and we're going to start coming down. And then we did. We had a 0.06% decrease last year. I expected that trend to continue down with commodity prices. But when I looked at the reports, the yields they had big crops. So that offset, so that correlated in SDSU's study and research, the value has gone up. So I'm not going to speculate where we're going to be next year. Non-crop for your grass soil types, again, that's a 5% increase. That's all valued on cash rents, animal units, all of that stuff. Again, that's all survey stuff. I don't have any part of it other than revenue gives me the number that I have to plug in for the county. So those have been put into the system. That's what will be going out on the assessment notices as their base beginning value. And again, if you have a grass soil, it starts out at that top dollar times the rating of your soil type, which most of those are about 35 to 40. So you're already at 40% of that, and then it's capitalized at 85% for a taxable value because we're considered to be at 100% of productivity value now. So ag buildings, we didn't do any changes on ag buildings this year. For non-ag, that's the meat and potatoes of our office and what we're doing now. You know, we study every neighborhood and every sale that comes in. We had about 1,200 sales. I had 494 sales that were valid arm's length sales that we look at. So going through there, we began from where I corrected everything last year, brought it to market, and then that stays, and then I compare where I'm at today when I started this study. And I was at 86.445% with a coefficient of dispersion of 13.36. So obviously, when I ended last year at about 93%, the market has increased, taking my values lower than market, so I have to readjust those. Going through all of that, making all of the necessary changes, you know, drilling down into the neighborhoods and then even down into house types, correcting the areas that needed up or down, putting all that back together. I have improved our ratio to 92.228 and a COD of 11.23, which is pretty good. Revenue requires that our coefficient be below 25, so we started at 13 and that's improved to 11.23. So with all of the changes that we've made, that's going to be going out on the assessment notice. Again, ag ratio, we're considered to be at 100% of productivity, so that the taxable factor will be 85. My non-ag ratio being at a 92.228 ending, and this has to be approved by revenue yet, should correlate to a factor of 0.922 taxable. So that's what we did. The next page is, let's see, which one you got up there, Stacy? Well, the next one, the sales spreadsheet, which is what you were on, that one there, these are all the sales that I have to use. And if you look at the sales, it has their, you know, the parcel number, the county, the sequence, the year, what type of property it is, the instrument date of their transfer, what they sold for, then what our building value and our land value was and our total assessed. And that was our ratio we were sitting at the time they sold. And then I've calculated the median deviation from that. Then I have to go out and analyze all of that and make all of the changes, and then I have to plug that value back in and recalculate a median ratio of sales, and then we drill that all the way down, and then the final page is the calculations showing where I was and with all my changes where I arrived. So this is just a big spreadsheet, but this is what I have to send revenue. This is what I get audited on and was audited on, but now that I've done this, they will re-audit all of these sales again and calculate the same thing I do, and then I'll get a letter saying, do I agree or disagree? And usually there's one sale that they'll find that says it shouldn't be in there and you used it, or we've got one that you didn't use that should be, that was missed in the initial audit. Usually it doesn't change the factor any, so I expect that to go through. The next one is, this one here is the summation of all of the neighborhoods and all of the changes that we did, and this is a little cryptic for you guys. Makes a lot of sense to our office. like the first one, Blair Hill second, that neighborhood. Those numbers that you see there, that F4, F5, and then that F48, those are land. We're valuing at a front footage at a square foot rate. We voided those. We did some changes. So this is all of the neighborhoods that we did. And then I've put in some annotation underneath as to say what it was and what we did. So these are all of the changes that were made to the individual neighborhoods that then plug back into the county-wide. So again, a lot of information, but these are kind of nice to keep. We keep all of these. If I was to ever find out that, something went haywire, we're way off the mark, I kept track of the model serial number that we were using last year to the new one, and if something went haywire, I could go into the computer in one step and put in last year and revalue the whole thing and come right back to the original value that I was at. So just good history notes there. And then the last one is actually our preliminary abstract, and this is of course going to change quite a bit with putting in the factors once they're approved, applying all of the exemptions that we don't know about yet. The elderly freeze hasn't been entered into here. Any new disabled vets, things like that. Also, any board action, whether it be local or county board, will affect this. But I don't have this on your page because I have to submit this, but I've done some quick calculations on here just for your knowledge. 2017, we ended at $3,360,889,880. This year, preliminary right now, we're going to end with our TIF increment at $3,573,059,161. A difference that we've added to the value of Brookings County is $212,169,281. That's growth and reappraisal. So it equates to a 6.31% total value increase in the county, which is actually kind of correlates the information I gave you last time about how much our sales had gone up. It's kind of ironic that it falls in that same number. So $212 million is what our office worked on this year. And then the last thing, I didn't get this put into yours. It was kind of an afterthought, and this isn't required by revenue, but just some building permit information for 2018. Brookings City for 2018 permits, we had 452. We're down a little bit. Last year we were at 470. Small towns, we had 166 building permits. Last year we had 137, so we're up. And then the townships, we had 153, and last year we had 194, so we're down a little bit in the townships. But as far as new cities go, or new houses go, Brookings City, we had 61 new houses this year, where last year we had 75, so we're down a little bit there. Small towns, I had 58 this year. We had 42 last year, so Aurora and Volga are really picking up the pace. And townships, we had 31 this year and 25 last year, so up in the township. So newer houses are still going and growing. Our total parcel count, which is a number that I've kept you in the loop on when we hit that 17.5 mark, is when the compliance issue comes into play. 2015, we had 16,488. 2016, 16,749. 2017, we had 16,887. And now starting out in 2018, we've got 17,052 valued parcels. So a lot of numbers. But
Any questions from the commission?
okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Sorry. Back on the very first page where you were talking about the ag land productivity methods
Yep.
and top dollar, just for the people that are looking at that, that's the most that parcel can be valued at, right? for
You know,
tax
I've caught
purposes?
myself saying yes, but
Okay.
that is not true because I do have a township that is not. They're above that, and it's a set number of sections because the township has made the adjustment at local board level and said, this land and that land, you've got them valued the same. This area of our township, the production on these is off the charts compared to the land that you have. And I said, I can't do anything. And this is before me. This goes back to my predecessor. But If you guys as a board want to make a change, because you have the power to increase, you have the power to decrease, you draft it, document it in your minutes, we'll make the change. So we've got a plus 10% factor on a certain number of quarter sections and sections. There's about 4 sections in one township, because the soils are the same as the other side of the township, but they produce way better. And there's factors, who knows, there's factors that we can't analyze. Is it irrigated? I can't take that in. That comes into the county average. But they have put documentation together in their local board minutes. So we've used that as our documentation to make the adjustment on their request. So yes, everyone else in the whole county, that's the most you can be per acre.
And then last year you told us that the productivity valuations were approximately on ag land 45% of
That's
fair market.
of the sales. Yeah, we're still there.
We're still there?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. That isn't changing much. Sales are still pretty strong. They're coming down though. You know, if you look on the county website, we maintain a list. If you look on Beacon, on the front page of Beacon, or on the county website under the equalization, there's a link to county ag land sales. You can go there. We track all of the arm's length sales, and we put on what our value is, what they sold for. We do a breakdown of per acre by grass, per acre by soil, overall soil rating. And you can just look at it and see we're nowhere near market value.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Happy New Year.
Dick, would you like to be next?
Good morning. I really don't have much of anything, just normal snow removal and maintenance and moving into the new year with getting ready for our bids coming up in February. So, other than that,
Questions for
does
Dick?
you have any questions?
Thank you. Mike? Okay. Vicki? And Bob?
Good morning. Tonight we have a planning meeting, starts at 7 p.m. Just a few items on the agenda. Of course, every time I say that, it goes to 11, 12 o'clock. There is a joint jurisdiction area city-county planning meeting on January 10th, scheduled at 9 a.m. in this building. January 11th, there's a Brookings County Firefighter Association meeting, and that'll be 7 p.m. over at the East Fire Station over by Burger King. We're working on getting our zoning ordinances updated. We think now realistically we're looking at 2020, and we'll keep plugging away at it, and hopefully we can do it by the end of 2018 or 2018. And we're working on, right now we got the state and local agreement for the first quarter 2018. We'll bring that at the next meeting to you guys. And I've got a NACO Justice Committee call on Thursday. And for those of you going to the NACO conference, legislative conference in February sometime, we may need to get together and we can explain to you what goes on into them and what to expect and what meetings to go to and what meetings not to. If you've never been there, it can be overwhelming, especially the legislative one versus the main one. And but we'll be more than happy to assist you on that. Just let us know. And that's all I have. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Scott, are you filling in for Marty today? Don't have anything. Okay. Then we're going to move on to regular business. And the first item on the agenda is an action to approve the Brookings Register, Volga Tribune, Tri-City Star, and Elkton Record as the legal papers for Brookings County for 2018. Would we have a motion?
So move. Second.
Any discussion? Call the roll.
Miller? Aye. Krogman?
Aye.
Bartley?
Aye.
Pierce?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Our next item is action to approve the official depositories for Brookings County funds and monies for 2018 as follows: Richland State Bank, Bank Star Financial, Citizen State Bank, First Bank and Trust of Brookings, Dakota Bank, Wells Fargo, Great Western Bank, and Meta Bank.
Move approval.
Sec.
Stacy, would you just tell us a little bit about this? Okay.
These are just all the banks in the county, and we do have money in some form in every one of the banks in the county. So this is the list of what we can use for banks for the year.
Any discussion by the commission? Call the roll.
Krogman?
Aye.
Bartley?
Aye.
Pierce?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Next item is action to approve Resolution 18-01, a resolution setting meeting pay and per diem rates for volunteer county boards for 2018.
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion?
Are these the same as they are right now?
Yes.
Anything else? Call the roll.
Bartley?
Aye.
Pierce?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Krogman?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Action to approve Resolution 18-02, a resolution setting the pay for election workers for 2018.
Move approval.
Second.
Vicki, I just had a question on this. We talked about this at budget time, I think. Are we at a rate where you're able to get workers?
Yes, we hope so. It increased by $1 an hour. So the increase I think we really needed, but hopefully now we will. A lot of them do it more for not the money, but just their duty. But it's still good to be able to compensate them.
Anything further? Call the roll.
Pierce?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Krogman?
Aye.
Bartley?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item E, action to approve Agreement 1801, an application for occupancy of right-of-way of county highways made by Sioux Valley Energy.
Move approval. Second.
Any discussion? Call the roll.
Miller?
Aye.
Krogman?
Aye.
Bartley?
Aye.
Pierce?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item F, action to approve Agreement 1802, an intergovernmental contract for the South Dakota Public Assurance Alliance.
Move approval.
Second.
Stacy, would you want to explain?
We are a member of the South Dakota Public Assurance Alliance for, and Lynn Brennan was with us via phone with our liability insurance. It's the pool that encompasses, I believe, just about every county in the state now, as well as, we're joined with the risk pool. So they had just a couple of minor changes to the contract that we've had with them for a number of years. The one change was reflecting their goal, allocating 100% ownership of their net position to the members. And then the other change was with the board of directors. Both the executive directors for the South Dakota Municipal League as well as the South Dakota Association of County Commissioners, Bob Wilcox, will now be voting members on that executive board rather than ex officio members as they have been in the past. So those were the two main changes, and so they passed that on now to be approved to approved by the counties.
Any further discussion? Call the roll.
Krogman?
Aye.
Bartley?
Aye.
Pierce?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item G, action to approve Agreement 1803, an independent contractor agreement between Brookings County and Brenda Cologne.
Move approval.
Second.
Anything you'd like to add on that, Vicki?
Just what was in there. Instead of being here on a monthly basis, she is just going to be as needed. She'll be here probably January, February, and March for the annual report, and then as needed when we do the audit, or if we have any other questions, but she does not want to be working on a full-time basis. And this is kind of what we planned when we first had her, is to kind of wean off of it, and that is what we're doing.
Any further discussion? Call the roll.
Bartley?
Aye.
Pierce?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Krogman?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item I, action to approve cell phone reimbursements for 2018.
Move approval.
Second.
Did we miss H?
H.
Oh, we
Sorry.
did miss H, I'm sorry. We'll go ahead and finish I, and then we'll come back to H, since we already had a motion second. Any further discussion on cell phone reimbursements? Call the roll.
Pierce?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Krogman?
Aye.
Bartley?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item H, action to approve Agreement 1804, an election agreement for Brookings County.
Move approval.
Second.
Who would like to speak to this?
Good morning.
Morning.
So what we did is we kind of revamped this. We did mimic it off of the previous agreement that we had. We just made a few adjustments because we do have the e-poll books. The old agreement didn't have e-poll books listed. We've gotten some new equipment since then, so we've kind of just revamped it to mimic the new technology.
I had a question about some of the phrasing in the agreement,
Yeah.
and specifically, there was no definition of what proportionately share means, and I did not understand what that meant when we're talking about candidates, ballots, ballot items, that kind of thing. What are we talking about there?
Well, like I said, this kind of went off of the old. I'm not sure if maybe Stacy can kind of help too in what initially some of that meant, but basically, my take on it is that if during the combined election, if the city and school have maybe one or two items on there and we have a big ballot, just us taking, the portions that would be ours for the election.
So you're not clear either then on what.
I guess I'm not
proportional share
100%
means.
clear, on what it initially was set out.
Basically it's based on the amount of space taken up on the ballot. So I think it's determined by each individual election. You have that discussion with, if it's the city or the county, discussing what, you look at the ballot and say, okay, what percentage of this ballot is the city's, and what percentage of that would be the county's, and decide on that ahead of time. For every election, it could be very different. If the city has a very lengthy ordinance that they're voting on and they have it on our ballot and it takes up 2.5 columns worth of ballot, their proportion is going to be much larger. So that's what I think we initially based it on. This was drafted 10 years ago, I think. So I think we've had a combined election maybe once with the city had put something on our ballot. So I think it's a discussion that is had at each individual. Anytime there's a combined election, you sit down and you work that out ahead of time with those individuals.
Any other discussion on this issue, on the agreement? Has this already been reviewed with the school district and the city?
It has not. No, we have an upcoming meeting with them. Is it
The 8th,
the 8th?
next Monday.
To give this to them, and then they could take it to their.
In the last couple of years, it seemed like, from your office's perspective, that there might be a concern that the county was having too much of the burden and other entities weren't sharing their appropriate share of burden, in particular as relates to personnel. And I I wonder if this agreement needs to be looked at before it's adopted again, and there should be a definition of proportionally share in there, if that's what we mean, and none of us are in agreement on exactly what it means, but it should say that specifically in there. And then in some cases, it wasn't clear when you read the agreement, and we said that the other entities had to provide a person. I think what the agreement was to be was they were each, if they're both involved in the election, they each have to provide a person, and it doesn't specifically say that either. But I just wonder if we're ready to move forward on adopting this agreement.
We are definitely open to suggestions if there's.
What's the commission think?
I mean, have we made any changes that help the problem that we've had in the past, I guess?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Have we made any changes, like Commissioner Pierce said, that helps with the problems that we've had in the past to address those?
We did put in here that they would reimburse us, a certain dollar amount per hour for staff use, if in the event that it's just their elections.
Right. I mean, is that okay? I mean, they could just hire you guys rather than hiring somebody else is the problem. And I'm not sure we want that you're working somebody else's election because they didn't provide somebody, even though they're reimbursing us, still time extra.
Yeah, there is, I'm sorry, Vicki, go ahead.
Well, it is a burden for our office, but we're the only ones that can get into the system. So we just want to have it in there that they do have to reimburse us. And we do have that in there now, just to make sure that, we are reimbursed at least for our time.
Okay.
We are hoping that with the new e-poll book software, that it will be less time consuming. There's a portion of it, entering the absentees and stuff like that, that part of it won't change. But getting ready for an election, we're hoping will be a little bit less hectic. Until we go through a first election, we don't really know for sure, but we're really hoping, from what it looks like, that it will take less time from our office to do their elections.
Is this agreement reviewed annually then?
No, actually it wasn't. It was kind of in place, I think, like Stacy said, maybe like 10 years ago, and it was just in place ever since then. And going through it with all the changes in technology and things like that, it really just didn't fit anymore. So we thought we really needed to look at it again and make those changes.
So this is what we're proposing to the other entities at this point in time, and to Commissioner Pierce's concern that they provide personnel. If they're not trained in your system, is there a lot of use for their personnel to be there, or is it more important that we use our personnel and get reimbursed?
It's more important for us to use our personnel for before election night, I guess, is where we need to be at. On election night, we want them to come in and help us out and do their part too. So.
And has that been a problem with them showing up on election night?
I haven't had any problems. I don't know that Stacy ever did either. So they've been pretty good about that.
Okay, so you feel somewhat comfortable that the change you've made as far as reimbursement for your expenses that you've added to this is adequate?
I think so, and we also added in there if there is a canvass or a recount that they would be responsible for their own. We would provide the scanner, but they would have to have the personnel to come and be there for their recount or whatever. And we did do that in the past, so without any compensation. So we have added that also.
Still not comfortable with that, Commissioner Pierce?
No, I'm not. There are ambiguities in how we have the agreement written, and that's where we always run into trouble on a legal document. And I think we should clean those up before we send them out to the school and the city to look at. They may have some other changes when that comes. And do we need to adopt an agreement before they've had a chance to look at it and make any changes that they want? We might have the cart before the horse, and us approving this agreement today before the city and the school have a chance to look at it, and we clean up some of the ambiguities in it.
So what you're basically suggesting is that we take this to those other entities for review and come back with a combined agreement
Exactly.
that we would all approve, rather than approving one and then having to change it later. Okay. So it'd probably be appropriate at this time to make a motion to a table for further review.
Second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
And the reason I'd like the table is to allow you to go ahead and give them this proposal and say, are there any changes you'd like to make to this proposal? And also to allow Commissioner Pierce to weigh in on what changes she might feel necessary before you present those to the other parties. It doesn't seem to be any need to have this done today, is what I'm looking at. So I think that's probably the proper way to go at it.
Call the roll on the motion to table.
Miller,
Aye.
Krogman,
Aye.
Bartley,
Aye.
Pierce,
Aye.
Jensen.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Item J, discussion and possible action to approve a request for $200 from the Brookings County Towns and Township Association. Any discussion?
I would just like to say, while $200 is a very minimal amount of money, 100 of that is for setup and tear down at the Swift Health Center. That cost would not be charged if this were done at the OAC.
Anything else from anyone?
I guess at this point, just as, again, the $200 is not a real large sum of money in this particular case. I think we're making a transition for this group from where they were before to where we'd like them to be in the future. I don't have a problem with approving the $200 for this year, but it's not going to be a continuation of that as we get further on with the OAC facility in the building and we know how we can handle this group as far as serving meals and so forth and tables and chairs and everything, that we certainly welcome them to use that facility instead, and instead of giving them the money to house it elsewhere. So it is a transition year for it, I guess, is my thought.
I had a question on they changed the day of the week. What was
It's now March 12th, I believe, is the date that they've chosen. Not sure if I have
Is
that in
that-
this calendar.
conflict with anything we have?
No, it's a Monday. I think they were trying to stay away from Tuesdays as they knew those were commission dates as they were, planning. But no, as of now, it doesn't. Well, it does conflict with commissioners.
Actually, I think we're back.
Are you back from the legislative conference by then? I don't
Back
have
on the
those.
8th.
Yes, actually you will be, because it's actually the week before that we have to discuss moving that March 6th meeting potentially. So, no, at this time it doesn't conflict with anything. I think they were just trying to avoid Tuesdays with commission, due to commission meetings and conflicting with those meetings, was my understanding.
And I think what they said when they were here is that the Swiftel wasn't available on the day of the week they normally have their meeting. Anybody want to make a motion, or how would you like to proceed?
So as we can have some definitive action, I'll make a motion to, we approve this request for $200 for the, from the Brookings County Town and Township Association for this year's meeting only.
Do we have a second? Okay, motion fails for lack of a second. Next item on the agenda, action to approve board assignments and department liaisons for 2018.
I've handed out a hard copy of the list for each of you. I think in the past what you've done is just kind of gone down this list one by one, and we have either volunteers or somebody gets appointed.
Maybe to do it a little bit easier, there are certain ones that Commissioner Pierce and Commissioner Bartley have to be on. So maybe we should put them on those first of all, so that everybody knows which those are. Like East Central Regional Communications Council, that's
our E911 board.
Mm-hmm. And that's Leanne.
Leanne would be the chair of that. And then Commissioner Bartley, as the vice chair, becomes the board member for that in anticipation of you becoming chair in 2019 and then chairing that, so that you've been at least on that board for a year.
The Housing and Redevelopment Commission would be Commissioner Pierce.
Housing and Redevelopment is always our chair, and then the local emergency planning committee, the LEPC, also the chair of the commission is the chair of that board as well.
So that's down quite a ways.
The LEPC, they're a member of the LEPC. They're not the chair of the LEPC.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Right.
And how often does that group meet? Monthly?
Once a quarter, ma'am.
Quarterly?
Yes, ma'am.
And then the last thing down in liaisons, you would be the liaison for emergency management. And then I think we can go ahead and do the rest.
Thank you. So would you like to proceed by just starting at the top of the list? And if you're currently the person on that, saying if you would like to stay or if there's something else you'd prefer?
Yes.
So we'll start with you, Larry, on 4-H Promotion and Expansion Committee. You
I'll
want to
stay.
keep that? Brian Beta? Ryan, Brookings County Regional Railroad Authority? And Larry, did you want to stay on that too?
Sure.
And I'd like to stay on BEDC if that's satisfactory. Stephanie, do you want to stay on the Extension Board?
Sure.
Mike, the Brookings Board of Health?
I suppose.
Stephanie, East Central Mental, the Domestic Abuse Shelter.
Yes.
Okay. Mike, East Central?
Yep.
Larry went off of East Central, okay. And then Stephanie, First District?
I'll stay on if nobody else wants it.
And I would stay on Governmental Affairs. Ryan, Growth Partnership? Mike, Interlakes?
Unless somebody else wants it. I guess I'm there.
Larry, the Jail Expansion Committee?
Yep.
Stephanie, Jail Expansion?
Unless somebody else wants to hop on. I'd be happy to have anybody else. Otherwise, I'll do it.
Ryan, BCOAC Advisory Board?
I was just going to say, whoa.
Stephanie, you staying on there also?
Yeah, but I would welcome anybody else.
And I'd like to stay on the Joint Jurisdiction Committee. How about you, Mike? Joint Powers? Mike?
Yeah.
Stephanie? Larry, Intergovernmental Meeting Group?
Yep.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, you do.
Those are the meetings that Mayor Corbett will call
They
occasionally.
called it
with-
intergovernmental.
Yeah.
So
Nobody called that. I thought it was just a get-together meeting.
leave the two of you on there. Mike, the Mental Health Task Force. And I would stay on Planning and Zoning. Stephanie, Weed and Pest.
Yes.
Stephanie, Youth and Family Services.
Yeah, unless somebody else wants to.
Ryan, Hospital Board. And then, do we do anything with Dr. Hebe at this meeting?
Typically, Marty has already talked to him. Scott, do you have any idea if Marty's talked to Dr. Hebe about being coroner? Okay.
And then the Sheriff's Office for Deputy County Coroner, and then the deputies, so that'll all fall into place. Then on Department Liaisons, Ryan, are you staying with Community Health and WIC? Larry, Equalization.
Yes.
Ryan, the Finance Office. Stephanie, Highway Department.
Yes,
Stephanie, Register of Deeds.
sure.
Larry, the Sheriff's Office and Detention Center.
Sure.
And I would stay with the State's Attorney's Office. Mike, Veterans Human Services. And Stephanie, Weed and Pest.
Yes.
And I'd stay with zoning. Did we miss anything?
No?
Do we need a motion to approve that, or just that takes care of it?
Actually, I
Well,
think you
it
do
is
take
an
action
action
to, now that you've gone through the
Mhm.
list, action to approve that list.
Do we have a
We
motion?
better. Yeah, I'll move.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Commission Department Director Report.
Just a couple of things to note that our association, the county commissioners and the county officials association, is selling 2018 county calendars, $10 each. There was a photo contest for those of you that went out to Rapid City in September. You may have noticed the different photos and may have even voted on the photos for the photo contest that was held during that convention. And those photos were used to create the calendar. So if you're interested in ordering one, let me know. Brookings Empowerment Project, I had some information in my staff report. They are having a network social on Monday, January 22nd at Wooden Legs from 6 to 9 p.m. You've also all been invited to attend the South Dakota Pipeline Association's core program that's coming up on Tuesday, this February 6th at 11:30 out at the Swift Health Center. That is an event that you do have to RSVP for, so if you would like me to do that for you, let me know. This morning in front of you, I placed the Conservation District meeting agenda. It is tomorrow afternoon at 1:15, I believe. 1:15.
Which is that?
Brookings County Conservation District meeting tomorrow. Also with Commissioners Pierce and Bartley going to the NACO Legislative Conference in March, that conference falls over our March 6th commission meeting date. So we would still have a quorum with the three of you attending, if the rest of you are going to plan to be here. but would you feel more comfortable in moving that meeting date?
Yeah, we lose our chair and our vice chair.
Yes, we
So then
would.
Stephanie falls in, the next one.
Well, yeah, it's kind of hard to know now, if it were a light meeting, it might not be a big deal, but if it's a big meeting, I think we should all be here.
We got one the 20th.
Yeah.
We do have a meeting on the 20th.
Another option would be to tentatively, and then we could decide when we got closer, to tentatively schedule it for the Friday the 9th when we're both back.
Or Thursday
What's
the 8th.
February look
We're
like?
not back in time on Thursday.
February, you meet on the 6th and the 20th.
We have on the 6th of February. That's when that pipeline meeting is too.
Yes. That doesn't start till 11:30. The pipeline meeting.
Did you say 11:30?
The pipeline meeting is 11:30 on the 6th.
RSVP me for the
What's
pipeline.
April look like?
You meet, commission meetings are the 3rd and the 17th. The 10th is equalization boards.
Yeah, we're already going to be probably going more meetings in April.
There are 8 counties in there somewhere too, isn't it?
In March.
In March, Vicki and I are planning to get together and look at dates and send that off to, First District assists in creating those agendas and helping pick those dates. So we're going to do that this week.
Would Monday the 12th work?
No, well, that's towns and townships.
No,
That's, yeah, March 12th is the Towns and Townships meeting.
What time is that meeting?
That starts at 10, I believe.
Okay. 13th?
We'll be at convention in Pier.
Convention starts,
is
is
it
14th,
14th
the
and
14th and 15th,
So
but we
13th.
would be leaving, probably leaving the afternoon of
Yeah,
the 13th, but the morning
We probably
would,
could do the morning.
So that still give you time to put the agenda together for the 20th? It should be gone a couple days.
It shouldn't be too busy. I mean, after we only got 1 week in between there.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I would have to have,
Stuff out on Friday.
yes, I would be probably putting the meeting and the agenda together for the 20th and the 13th at the same time with us being gone.
I guess it kind of looks like our options maybe are the Friday the 9th or Tuesday the 13th.
For the morning 13th or so,
Did you say you prefer the 13th?
I'd vote for that, I guess.
That's fine.
So we're going to cancel the meeting on the 6th. And move it to the 13th.
Is that going to do anything to claims?
I guess we'll deal with it if,
Okay.
And then the only other thing that I had were just your upcoming dates. The 15th offices are closed due to the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. Brookings State, the legislature is on the 17th. As I had noted, the Brookings Empowerment Project Network social on the 22nd. We are planning our county holiday social at the VFW like we do every year on Tuesday, January 23rd. That starts at 5:30 that evening. And then the one thing that I had forgotten too was this Thursday, January 4th at 1 o'clock is the drug court commencement. I think that was on the agenda, but not on my staff report. So the drug court commencement at 1 o'clock over at the courthouse this Thursday. Other than that, I don't have anything else unless you have any questions of me.
Day at the Capitol, what's everybody plans? I see you reserve the Traverse, but is that,
I will not be going.
well, I just see it says county vehicle on the travel request. I just saw it.
Oh, I didn't know if people were taking the Traverse or taking the bus, so I have not done it yet. That's just a tentative in case we do take it.
Right.
So.
I'm planning on going.
I'm planning on going.
Are you taking the bus or are you driving yourself?
Right now, the bus.
Bus?
Yes, unless other
More
options.
likely the bus.
Okay.
Bus? Did you want me to reach out to the chamber and let
Please.
them know?
Please, that'd be
Okay.
great.
I heard it was suggested to leave from the Swiftel. Place to park.
Yep.
And Stacy, as it relates to the pipeline meeting, you could RSVP yes for me if we're done with our commission meeting, but that caveat, I'd like to go to the pipeline meeting, but it depends on where we're at on our commission meeting.
Yeah, I don't think it's a big deal.
I would do the same. I have it on my calendar.
Anybody else want me to RSVP for the pipeline? Yes?
Anything further, Stacy? Terry, Deputy State's Attorney report.
Well, I invite you all to come over across the hall sometime to see our new Vic Witt room. It looks really nice. Just completed it, and everybody's shifting over. Our new employee will start tomorrow, and that's Amy Christensen. So another year, another transition, but it was good, and it looks really nice, and I think it'll be a nice area for our victims and witnesses to come and speak to our coordinator. Other than that, since last week, there really hasn't been any changes to reports. So.
And then commissioner reports. And how about if we start with you, Larry? We've got about 4 minutes.
I guess I have nothing since last week. So.
Neither.
And neither do I, since we met on Thursday of last week, just before Christmas. Okay, shall we take a brief recess before we start our public hearing at 9:30? So it's 9:30 and we'll start our public hearing. This is the time for the second reading and public hearing on ordinance 2017-06, an ordinance establishing a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit upon a portion of County Road 23. Am I correct that I'm supposed to read the ordinance? Okay. So the ordinance reads, an ordinance establishing a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit upon a portion of County Road 23, be it ordained by Brookings County, South Dakota, whereas pursuant to SDCL 32-25-9.1, the Board of County Commissioners may determine and establish speed zones upon all or any part of the highways under its jurisdiction, and whereas because of the high volume of traffic and the nature and condition of the road involved, it appears necessary to reduce the speed limit on a portion of Brookings County Road 23, provide for the safety and welfare of all residents and travelers on such road. Therefore, be it ordained that a speed limit of 25 miles per hour be and the same is hereby established on that portion of Brookings County Road 23, commencing at 145 feet outside of the northern city limits of the city of Aurora, South Dakota. Do we have any proponents to speak to this? I'm opening the public hearing at this time. There being no proponents, are there any opponents? Did anyone from the sheriff's office wish to say anything? Okay. We'll close the public hearing.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Who, Dick, who requested this 25? Was this the mayor?
Yes.
You know, we do a lot of messing around with speed limits over there.
This is the original one. They never got done before. It was brought to us earlier in the year.
Yeah, what, I didn't hear your question.
I just asked if the mayor was the one that wanted.
Right.
Earlier in the year, they requested it, and the exact location didn't get determined, correct?
Well, he was pretty vague about where he wanted it.
Right.
And then he went and put the signs up, and then he took the signs down, and then he put the signs up. And
Yeah.
So.
And
but
they
this-
finally come to agreement where they should be placed, apparently.
Right. The biggest concern for us is the location of the sign was in an extremely busy right-of-way that had a lot of high-pressure gas lines and fiber optic cables and everything else. So we would have preferred it to be back further, but Fred went and dug them in by himself, I guess. He's still got electricity and internet, so I guess he didn't hit nothing.
And I think, the town is growing that direction. They added a road
Right.
that is going to be one of the main roads that's going to head to the new
That'd
development
go
of Mill
east,
Park.
yeah.
And there'll be people slowing down to turn on that there too. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just probably a transition of the growth of the community. Even though the majority of the growth is on the east side, they did add that main road there that is going to be hopefully the main artery for that, and keeps people out of the Lovejoy
Right.
and the other one. So
Is there a turning lane there?
I don't think
Is
so.
there what?
A turning lane there?
No.
No, I don't think so.
You're just coming out of the turning lane area.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Call the roll.
Krogman?
Aye.
Bartley?
Aye.
Pierce?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Then I'm going to we'll open the public hearing on the second reading and public hearing of ordinance 2017-07, An ordinance establishing a 45-mile-per-hour speed limit upon a portion of County Road 23. The ordinance reads that. an
Leanne,
ordinance-
we can't do this
We
till
have to wait till-
9:40.
Pardon me?
We have to wait till
9:40.
9:40.
Oh, excuse me. We're 4 minutes ahead of schedule. I don't think we have any other business to conduct other than that.
Yes. The 14th and 15th.
It's on your schedule that you have.
The 14th, yeah, that's spring workshop out in Pier. It usually starts, there are some like exec board meetings and whatnot Wednesday morning, but it usually starts closer to midday on the.
You know what? I bet I'll have to be gone Wednesday that morning.
You'll have to be out there because you're on
Yeah,
the exec board. I
yeah.
bet you'd have to go out
Yeah, I
Tuesday
will. I
evening.
didn't think about that, but I will have to.
And then it usually wraps up about 3-ish, give or take, on that Thursday. So it's always at the Ramcota and Pier, and I believe I've already got rooms reserved there for all of us. So.
I wasn't on the board last
It's 9:40 now, too, so we
Okay.
can move ahead.
So we will go ahead and start our public hearing. The ordinance reads, be it ordained by Brookings County, South Dakota, whereas pursuant to SDCL 32-25-9.1, the Board of County Commissioners may determine and establish speed zones upon all or any part of the highways under its jurisdiction, and whereas because of the high volume of traffic and the nature and condition of the road involved, it appears necessary to reduce the speed limit on a portion of Brookings County Road 23 to provide for the safety and welfare of all residents and travelers on such road. Therefore, be it ordained that a speed limit of 45 miles per hour be and the same is hereby established on that portion of Brookings County Road 23, commencing at the northernmost border of the city limits of the city of Aurora, South Dakota. And we will open the public hearing at this time. Do we have any proponents? Being no proponents to speak, are there any opponents? Public hearing will be closed.
I would just note that in reviewing the ordinance, it appears to me that there is not a detailed spot where we say this commences. So I would ask that this matter be tabled so we can get a detailed spot from Mr. Burke, and then we can add that into the ordinance.
I think, Terry, even though it sounds vague, I'm assuming this is for northbound traffic leaving Aurora, it's currently 25 miles an hour, and then right as you get what you think would be out of town, it changes to 45. And I think that's why when their city limits changed over in Aurora to include that development Commissioner Krogman was talking about, that is their new city limits. So I think it makes sense that the speed limit would increase to 45 miles an hour after the northern city limit. But if you would want more refined measurements, I can certainly get them for you. Now, it ain't something we have to do today if we don't.
I think we need to have where it commences.
Okay.
Wouldn't the sign be directly across from the 25 mile per hour coming into town?
This should make it that, because the current city limits for the northern side is right at that development.
Because on the previous
It's
ordinance, you got 145 feet outside of the,
Right.
and then you install your 45 on the opposite side of the road going north.
Well, that's what would be the best wording to do it, to make it official. Yeah, that's what we normally do.
Okay.
What the prior ordinance did is set a 25 mile per hour speed limit going both directions. It didn't do just one direction. So this would change the way
Going
it's
north.
written, the 25 to the 45.
You're exactly right, yeah. But
It would move it, it would not encompass that 145 feet north. It would be right at the
yes,
city limits,
for
is what they're
northbound.
saying this one is.
right.
The 45 mile per hour zone would move farther north, go northbound lane.
So I think what I would do is just put 145 feet north of the north property line. Actually,
Well-
it's just,
Reverses.
it'll be the same wording as the previous ordinance you passed, only this one is dealing with northbound traffic, and the other one was dealing with southbound traffic.
I'm going to say it again. The
Doesn't
other
say
one
that.
did both directions. It didn't just do one direction. It set 25 miles going in and out.
So this does not say
Yeah.
north or southbound traffic.
This one?
This one,
This
Yeah.
this one would keep it at 25 until we would get 145 feet north of the north city limits, and then it would turn to 45. That would be northbound. The way it's written now, it's going to turn right at the city limit. So that's why I think Terry is accurate in saying we should clear up the wording to make it be.
well, and this one doesn't say northbound, southbound traffic, does it?
Well, it don't, but
45 feet.
you'd have to be going northbound to change at the north city limits, because you're currently in 25 mile an hour zone, because it changed at the south end of town. And the other way, you'd have to be coming in from the north, even though it doesn't say that, but you'd be going 45, and now you're going to go down to 25 mile an hour as you come into town. So,
Is it 45 miles an hour right now currently north of the road heading north is 45, correct? That would encompass this?
yes.
So if we don't even have this, then basically 145 feet north is 25 going both directions, and currently it's 45 north of it anyway.
Well,
From that 145, from what we just passed,
mm-hmm.
we just moved the 25 mile an hour speed limit from the edge of town to 145 to the north, and that's
Right.
going both directions.
Yes.
Okay, so
That's what'll happen.
right, and if you go further north, it's already 45.
Right.
And so really, this doesn't even need,
I
you don't
get
even
what you
need
mean.
this one.
I get what you mean. Yeah. You really wouldn't have to say the 45 mile an hour. You would just have to.
It's already there. We just
Yeah.
moved the 25, 145 to the north and
Right.
going both directions.
And that would cover it. Is that?
Is that, I don't know if that's what the city of Aurora intended, but.
Well, that's kind of the difficult thing, because it usually depends upon how the wind's blowing over there, how he decides. It's not, he, some days he wants it one way and some days he don't. I don't know. I guess we could check with him before we go through the process of it and find out if that's what his intent was.
Okay.
Really, the big thing is it's our road, and he's the one asking for permission. If it's clear for us, that would be, in most cases, sufficient for the local authorities. But in this case, we do that, and then we got to go through the process again formally if he convinces us that it should be different. So I just think we ought to do what's clear to us, and we're accomplishing what he intended, and that's what we do. If it's going to be difficult for
Well, yeah. Yeah, this makes it more.
Right.
I'll make a motion to table this, and we need to reach out to whoever in Aurora and see what their intent was.
Okay.
And we passed the first one already, so we moved the 25 mile an hour, 145 north of the city limits, and if they want something different, they're going to have to come back with something.
Okay.
You have in place a 45 mile per hour zone, already a resolution in place back at the existing one. That won't disappear then,
No, but we just did with the 45.
but that one is still there.
How is that? Which one were we talking about? Because I think what Commissioner Pierce is talking about is both directions. What we changed in the first one moved 145 feet north from both directions. So and so there is no 45 mile an hour, no matter what direction you go, from that direction left. I mean, I think that's what you have here.
Yeah, will you establish the northbound 45 mile per hour sign to be located then?
I would guess at the 145 feet, where the 25.
Right, that's where it
25.
should be.
Yeah, right. So that sign would have to move out to that 145
And that's
north.
what this should handle here, but it just doesn't have the exact footage on it.
Right, but my thought was it was already 45, so we just got to take that sign and just move it to the north 145 and put that one, because that's where it'll turn to 45 going north.
We have a motion to table. I think there's no discussion allowed, but we didn't have a second, so.
The only reason.
Second.
You got a second?
Okay.
Your first ordinance will go in effect January 31st, correct? That's what it says on the.
I think it's
Right.
Yeah.
I just feel there might be some enforcement issues on this if somebody would be picked up in that zone.
And I don't think our first ordinance, now that I didn't quite understand that that's what we were doing both directions. And I'm not sure our first ordinance is really clear either. But
Because there's been confusion in smaller towns before where you don't have your speed zone signs directly across the road from each other, so you actually got an overlap of, like Ryan's saying, you can take it as either a 25 or a 45 in that area.
who puts those signs up? Do you put those signs up, or does the city puts them up?
Well,
Even if it's outside the northern,
the first time we put them up where he wanted them,
okay,
and then after he clarified that that wasn't right, then we said, well, you put them up and we'll get the measurements from that. So the whole thing with this, like Larry says, when you deal with some of these smaller towns, they kind of want their cake and they want to eat it, and they can't always get a clarification. Sometimes we get the feedback from a person who's most opinionated and not from someone that has the ability to make a decision for where that should be. That's why, in my opinion, it's better left to us and let us decide where they should go and what they should do, and then Terry would have a clear idea of where to write the ordinance and word it so that it's dealing with what we want done on our road. The other second best, like when Mr. Weeks was here, I mentioned the very best scenario in this case is to turn the whole stupid road over to the city of Aurora and let them deal with it, and then they'll have a little better idea of what's involved in what they can control and what they can't.
Well, I guess what I look at is the first one moved the 25 miles to 145 north. This one turns around and changes it back to 45 at the city limits.
Mm-hmm.
So these two are doing two changes.
Well, yeah, but you got to remember that the city limits also changed.
Right, and that's fine, but it just yeah. The other one said 145 north. This one says 45 at there, so
Right.
it just basically changed. It may make a change for them, but I'm not sure it's the intent of what they're looking for.
Right, that's very possible. I think if you took the old city limits and moved 145 feet north of the old city limits, I think that's where their intent was originally. And so now that they've moved their city limits, did they want to include that extra 145 feet, or do they just want it at that point? That's the gray area.
So I think we should vote on the motion to table because we shouldn't be discussing once we have that, and then we'll come back to discussion on how to proceed. Would that be satisfactory with everybody? Would you call the roll?
Bartley?
Aye.
Pierce?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Krogman?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Motion carries.
My question is, Dick, then, with the ordinance that we did pass, would it be your intention to go out at that 145 feet from the northernmost border that they have right now, not the old one, but the one that's there now, because that's what the ordinance says, and put up a sign that says 25 miles per hour going each direction?
Yes.
Okay. And then you'll also put up the change to
Would
40?
be go each direction. It would be the southbound lane would be a 25, and then the northbound lane would be a 45, because you're going north.
But it doesn't say that in our ordinance. The ordinance that we passed says for that 145 feet, it's 25 miles per hour.
It
Right.
is.
Doesn't say which direction you're going.
Right.
Nope.
But it stops at 145 one direction. It starts another direction.
Right.
And so where it stops, we need to put a sign up to where what it increases to, which is going to be 45.
Right.
Okay. And then in there, it's 25 coming there because it goes from 45 to 25. So you're not going to put two 25s.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
One at each end.
Yes.
Okay. One at each end.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Because it's this.
Exactly.
It's the south end and the north end.
So you'll do the
South is
signing.
going to stay the same.
Yeah.
It's the north that signs are going to move.
Right.
Yeah. And it might not hurt to have Terry research the current way the ordinance is listed, just in case Leanne is, if it would clarify the situation, just make that change. Because I think if you said you were going to change to 25 miles per hour at 145 feet north of the city limits, that would mean 25 miles an hour both sides. You wouldn't necessarily direct or control the speed of traffic at two different speeds on the same section of road. It wouldn't.
I think that's what their intent was with these two
Right.
things was the stuff going north doesn't have to wait to go to 45 past that 145. You can start at city limits, but then you've got a 25 coming in and a 45 going out in the same
Right.
stretch of road, which is
Not
enforceability comes in with like what Commissioner
They had
Jensen
that in
said.
Volga before. They wanted a speed zone past the cemetery, but they didn't want the 25 coming in. Well, it ended up being an enforcement issue, and it actually got changed by the cemetery.
One of the things we could do at this particular point in time, and it'd be appropriate, would probably be a motion to reconsider our vote on 2017-06, so that we can table that in addition to this if you want a review of both. Okay, so at this particular time, I'll make a motion to reconsider the second reading on ordinance number 2017-06.
Second.
Any further discussion on that?
No discussion on the motion to reconsider.
Okay, call the roll.
Pierce,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
Krogman,
No.
Bartley,
Aye.
Jensen.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, so now that motion is up for reconsideration. Right now, this one still stands unless we reconsider it and vote it. We can vote it up or down at this point again.
We tabled this, or that, you're talking, okay.
No, I'm talking about 06. Apparently, there seems to be a conflict between the two, and if we can resolve that and come back with one ordinance that makes sense, then let's do that.
Well, I guess the reason I voted no for it, but what makes sense to me is there's a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit that went 145 to the north, and that's what they wanted. But it seems like their intent was also to get the other traffic coming the other direction at 45, which I don't think is a good idea, an enforcement issue. So I'm fine still with the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit moved to 145. And I guess if they want something different, you know, and they want to come back to us and show up and explain what their intent is, want to change it, I guess we could do that. But as it is now, I would still vote for it to be at the 25 at 145 out.
And I'd like us to withdraw our approval of this ordinance and table that along with the other one, and give the state's attorney's office an opportunity to come back with one ordinance, because we're talking about the same stretch of road.
That's what I was going to ask
Right.
you. Can't this be in one?
An ordinance.
And make sure the city limits is
Yeah,
which city limits they're talking about also.
exactly.
I think if we put it all in one ordinance, it would be clearer to everybody.
It is right now.
As mud.
It's in one ordinance.
It's clear depending on how you read it, which is always the case in these things. How about enforcement issues?
That's what
Any issue with enforcement? So if you're going 45 one way and 25 the other, this obviously doesn't say that, but I can see that as being a nightmare for enforcement. If I'm northbound, I can go 45. I'm southbound, I can only go 25. If they both go to 25, to that 145 feet, as this ordinance says. We probably should have you come up to the mic.
Just say, for instance, you're southbound from the ethanol plant. Okay, you're in the 45 zone or whatever you want to say, and you're coming up to that. Now you're 145 feet, or that changes to 25. Well, okay, now you're northbound, coming from the city limits. Well, yes, that needs to change to 45 right there. I mean, your signs are going to be different, but together.
But the one we tabled didn't say that. When we tabled, wanted the 45 to start at the city limits, not the 145, and so.
Oh,
But
yeah,
the second
right.
one, and so we tabled that one right now.
Yeah, but they need to be across from each other for as far as enforcement goes.
I agree.
Yeah, because if they're 145 feet apart or whatever, that can make the difference whether we get a ticket thrown out or not thrown out. So
would somebody like to make a motion as relates to 2017-06? Because that's up for reconsideration. And so we either need a motion to approve or a motion to table.
Well, if we want to put them in one, then we need to reconsider that one.
Exactly.
So I'll move to reconsider.
We already got the
Or we
motion
did
to
move.
reconsider.
Yeah, but now we need to table it.
Yes.
We need to table it, right?
Well, I somewhat agree with Ryan. This really does take care of it. The other one's not necessary. Looks to me.
So do we have a second on the motion, or?
I don't know. She made a motion to table for sure. She
table.
was just asking. Was that a motion?
To table.
Okay.
Was there a second on the motion to table? Okay. Call the roll.
Miller,
Aye.
Krogman,
No.
Bartley,
No.
Pierce,
Aye.
Jensen.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Now let's put this in one. Yes. And make it clear. I think
So basically, we've tabled both of these indefinitely. Because if we're going to combine and create one ordinance, we have to start the process over again. First reading, second reading. Okay.
And I think we have covered our agenda. Do we
Motion
have-
to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.